Is equity more important to consider than privilege when we look at political activism? How important is meaningful inclusion in mobilizing for peace? This is part two of my conversation with Keith Jones on the topic of mobilizing for peace. I'm Annette Bourbonnais from Nothing Without Us, Stories and Discussions of Meaningful Inclusion. I am a 70-ish-year-old woman with dark-rimmed eyeglasses, wearing a red and black shirt with a paisley print there, and I'm sitting in a power wheelchair. Please take the time to free subscribe if you've not already done so, and give me a like and make some comments. I read all the comments. We do see things in a different light than
Yes.
other people because you and I and several of others in this circle that do this work have been able to look at the bigger picture
Right.
instead of the microscopic picture. And I have learned to do things that I never thought I would do, including this, by the way. I like to be in the background for a long
Right,
time, you know.
right.
But I have learned a lot of things, and I've learned that I've learned to be more political, which not something I was ever not something I ever thought of doing, but I write every time something is coming up that attacks disability rights or any human rights, and including, all the what they're doing with ICE, what they've been doing
Yeah.
with ICE and all. I write to my congressional representative. I write to my senators. They all know me.
Yeah. Well, they better, yeah.
and and I think that, and I tell them, you got to do your job. This is what you need to address this. Maybe it wasn't on the list when you were campaigning because it was not uh, uh,
Yeah.
a real fiery issue at the moment, but it is now. You need to address it, and
Yes.
and I'm that person now. For some reason or other, they've come to like me, which is fine too, because then I get the ear more often.
Right, right.
But so I try not, I don't call them some of the names I see people put in their postings. God, people get so brazen on social media. It's creepy.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah,
I got a keyboard and nobody can see what I'm typing. Oh,
right.
absolutely.
Yeah, right. I don't do that. I don't think, even if I feel like it, I write a draft, throw that one out.
Yeah, right, right,
Continue up.
right.
I mean, if I have to write it, then I'll write it, but I don't send it. In fact, I don't ever write things that I'm feeling fiery about right in the email where I could accidentally hit send,
Right, right,
you know,
right,
um,
right.
because I want people to listen to me.
Hmm.
And if I say all that garbage, they're not going to listen to me because they're going to say, "Oh yeah, another one," you
Yeah.
know, and that's part of the reason. I
Well, it's funny when you say that because that this is where so there is a weirdness, and I'm gonna use these terms, just whatever. There's a weirdness in our political structure in which the political parties understand that the function that they are actually supposed to do
Mhm.
is a bastardized version of what public service is. If you are seeking public office, i.e., city council rep, ideally the goal is to, as a candidate, I have scanned all the issues where I've seen the road that we're driving down and seen all the potholes. And my
Mhm.
candidacy is to keep the road intact and then to fill in the potholes. And then, if the road needs to be resurfaced, take all that stuff up, give you a new road so we never have potholes again, except for the fact that the two that if you are able to get elected, it is almost impossible to be unelected. And when people believe that their position puts them above the people that they're serving, as what we're having now. As an advocate, I used to, I still kind of gristle at it, but I get it. But when we're having, let's go meet our legislatures and tell our lived experiences and hope that they somehow are emotionally moved enough for them to do some, like, no, I'm not coming here to impress you for
Right,
you to be emotionally impacted on my quality of life so you
right,
cannot vote to kill me. The
right,
job, like you know, like so shifting we need to reconfigure
right,
one, the political expectation, and we need a new pool of candidates.
right. We need, oh yeah, youthful candidates for sure. We also need
Yes.
to remind them regularly. Now, as my employee, this is what I would like you to do. This is
Yes.
your job evaluation. This is your job interview. And I think if we remind people in general that this is how you approach it, you work for us. This is your performance evaluation. This is your employment interview. And empower people to understand this, because
Yes.
then they're going to know, oh, if I screw up, but we have to do it, and we have to do it strongly,
Yes.
and
Yes.
together, we have
Yes.
to, one of the things, I don't know if I ever mentioned to you, do you know, I mean, it's a Rhode Island state senator, her name's Tiara Mack, have you ever heard of
The
her?
name sounds familiar.
Okay, so she does a podcast with a woman by the name of Rachel Cohen,
Okay.
and they're the pragmatic optimists.
Yes.
Okay. And one of the things that they promote is, and they say it's the reason, one of the reasons we're in all of this is that the Democrats never went in with an affirmative message. And that is true. I mean, gotta say, we did not be strong. You know, that's a I think it's an understatement, actually.
I, no, they're trying to be slick by half.
No, no,
Like,
there,
no, I'm just when I hear, because political analysis about how, on a national or even a geographical region,
right,
how America post Bush
yeah,
v. Gore has moved into where we are now
yeah,
is, and both political parties have never ever, because black folks or disabled folks
right,
have never been the target of the Democratic Party. They have
no,
the last couple of cycles in post the Obama coalition has
yeah,
about how do we get back to quote white working class voters. That in and of itself, in terms of political dynamics, particularly for
yeah,
people with disabilities,
yeah,
has led people who are, you know, it it is because the Democrats' message in 2000, if anybody is looking at 2024
right,
and saying that the message was soft, knowing that you had a sitting vice president who, for however you feel that she became top of the ticket, is running against Donald Trump. And then the people who are doing postmortem are saying, well, our message wasn't strong enough. Then the question you have to ask is, who are you talking to? Where
right,
somebody can have a neo-Nazi rally in Madison Square Park, Madison Square Garden,
yeah,
and then
right,
play Welcome to Dixie, and then 1 year and some months later have you on the verge of global war. That's not messaging. That's you overlooking the core of what America is. And
that,
America
that,
at its core is
right.
racist.
They're racist, they're full of hate, they're full of
Yes.
entitlement,
And sexist.
and oh my God, taxes.
It
Well,
did. Yeah, yeah.
I think, what we need, and this is my opinion, and I'm not forcing anybody to buy into it at this time.
Right, right, right.
Um, but I do think we need to really go strong on a message where First of all, once if we finally get out of this mess, I think
Mm.
every billionaire has to pay a one-time 50% wealth tax.
Yeah.
And that has to be used to pull our country out of the, our butts out of the fire, so to speak, but also to set up two of the things that are really needed to make this economy grow. And one is free healthcare,
Yeah.
universal, no
Yes.
Medicaid, Medicare for all, you get this copay or this covers that.
Yeah.
No, we need healthcare, period.
Yes.
That is one thing. And that's across the board, no matter your race, disability, gender, country of origin. This is what needs to happen. The
Right.
second is free education right through,
Yes.
all the way through. Okay. Now
Yes.
that has an equalizing possibility because for people like you, people like me, getting through academia is a nightmare. Because you
Yes.
have not only the same stresses as other students, but you carry that burden of the racism, the ableism.
Yeah.
They don't want us to succeed.
Say that again.
And what?
I said you can say that again.
Right.
Oh,
And if we don't succeed, we're not at the top and we
right.
cannot help bring people up. So then there's not enough of us there yet. So we need to do this. And this is something we need to focus, I think, on those two issues.
Yes.
And I think there's one other one that I would really like to, I could say a lot of different things, but let's add one more,
Yes.
is that no person or entity, no matter how wealthy, should pay less tax than people on SSI because people on SSI actually pay a 50% tax on their earnings
Yes.
because you lose $1 of benefits for every dollar you earn.
Yeah.
So it's actually so if either you lower the tax for people on SSI or you need to pay it too.
I love all those ideas, and it sounds like you read half of that stuff was when I tried to run for the United States Senate, and they kneecapped my candidacy and said I was too progressive. That was 2007, 2008. I think those three areas you talked about are found, but that is not radical. That literally has been the underpinning of financial structure since the 50s. If you're talking about, you talk, so there is something that I think there's something called perpetual investment or perpetual innovation, which is what they use in terms of Fortune 500 companies to put money offshore. Prior to 2016, 2019, I believe that at one point there was something like $3.5 trillion of that offshore. Just so, and they kept it there so they did not have to pay corporate tax. When you talk about healthcare in America, it's politically, it is not impossible to do.
Right,
If, and nothing in America is impossible to do. But when
right,
you talk about what is the underlying motivating factor to do it or to not do it,
right,
people, this goes back to the thing we were talking about earlier in terms of privilege. It is, if I get universal health care, I don't want my money going to, and then you can fill in the blank. Oddly enough, that the reason, again, America does not have universal health care, not because America can't have universal health care, because America had a 12-year campaign about if you gave it, then the Negro would get health care. This is not, so if you're talking about education, the reason you have No Child Left Behind, and the reason you have the IDEA not being fully funded, the reason you have states attacking 504, this is not because disabled people like Annette and Keith say, you know what, we really like going back to the Stone Ages. That's because there is an ideological underpinning driving policy that, like you said, even in Rhode Island, people,
right,
there is a psychology of politics in the United States that has never been about expanding or making people's lives easy. In the areas you're talking about in terms of universal health care, fully funded public education from the soup to nuts, and
Right.
having an appropriate greater scale tax rate to where if you
Yep.
there's no reason
Yep.
that Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk together are worth $1.4 trillion. And then you say, okay, if they need to go to the bank today to pull out their $1.4 trillion, do they have it? And the answer, ladies and gentlemen, is no, because there's a difference between cash on hand and what you are worth. And so for our community, we have to say universal health care, public and fully funded and accessible education, and appropriate tax rates, and the rewriting of Social Security laws. We could never lose that. And then you work across building that coalition with disabled
Right.
veterans, the senior community, migrant
Right.
community. You can't lose on that.
This year is the year for the midterm elections. For Rhode Island, that means it's the year of all of our state legislators and senators, and the governor, secretary of state, treasurer, attorney general are all elected as well. If we want change, we need to inform all of them that they work for us. They are our employees. We need to tell them who we are and what we need to make life fair for us. We need elected officials who will listen to us, and we need to tell them what will work and that what will work for us will benefit the state as well. So let's make sure everyone who is running in the midterm and state elections knows something about disability, about the problems we face, about policies that need to be reinforced or changed. So in the spirit of the late Alice Wong and her associates, Greg Barrington and Andrew Polrang, let's keep Crip the Vote alive. Use that hashtag on social media to make our voices heard. So it is hashtag Crip the Vote. Okay. I will run a Crip the Vote sub-series on this podcast for everyone running in Rhode Island and maybe Massachusetts if people request them, to come and talk about disability issues and policies. This includes those running for election or re-election in Congress, Senate, governor, legislature, local races, all of the ones that are running. So during the 2024 election, I had a pretty decent response to requesting participation from office holders and candidates. I hope for the same or better in 2026. I was really new then. So now, as listeners to Nothing Without Us, you can participate in this. Let me know, who do you want to hear from? What do you want them to know? What questions do you want answered? And you can let me know if you want to join me in that interview and information session. We can make it happen remotely or in person if they're meeting in person. So Nothing Without Us should be a place for many voices to be heard. While I think I'm pretty in touch with all the disability issues, I'm sure some of you will think of things that I do not. And if this is to be a lively community, then you need to have a seat at this table. So it's through empowering ourselves that we will be able to protect our rights. So let's do it. So tell me in the comments who you want to hear from, what questions you want asked or issues discussed. And if you want to join in this interview, let's make all of our voices heard. Thank you for listening to part 2 of my conversation with Keith Jones on Mobilizing for Peace. If you like what I'm doing here, please subscribe. You can subscribe for free, but there are some additional benefits for paid memberships, including early access to some episodes and special episodes only available to paid members. Don't forget to leave me a like, make some comments, and tell your friends. They can find this podcast at patreon.com/nothingwithoutus. We will soon be back up on YouTube and Spotify. So join us in the third and final part of this discussion with Keith, where we will discuss moving forward as a coalition. Please help me by free subscribing to this last episode. Until the next Nothing Without Us, I'm Annette.